I call this meeting back to order. We are resuming meeting number 114 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Natural Resources. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format. I would like to remind participants of the following points. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. All comments should be addressed through the chair. Members, please raise your hand if you wish to speak, whether participating in person or via Zoom. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best we can. Before we begin, I have one small housekeeping item. Before we resume, and as previously mentioned, there has been a request to meet with the Minister of Natural Resources from Finland on Monday, November 25th, with an informal meeting beginning for colleagues at 10:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. before our usual meeting time. And if the committee wishes to proceed, I would like to give the clerk unanimous consent to make the necessary arrangements to host our guests from Finland. And I'll quickly look around, and it looks like we have unanimous consent, but I will go to Mr. Angus. Mr. Angus, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, coming from a region that has a strong Finnish tradition that have influenced so much of our culture and our people and the work, I'm very supportive of this.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Angus, for that. If thank you, colleagues, and look forward to seeing all of you. Hopefully you can attend on Monday morning at 10:30 a.m., I believe, right here in this room. So now we will move forward. When we suspended on Monday, we were debating the motion of Mr. Bruson as amended and the amendment of Ms. Goodridge. So the speaking list, when we ended, we had Mr. Patzer who had the floor. So Mr. Patzer, I want to go back to you to continue on your debate. The floor is yours, sir.
There we go. Well, how very kind of you, Mr. Chair, that you wanted to come back to me. I really appreciate that. Yeah, so I think when I left off last time, I was talking a little bit about oil well abandonments and how there is an abandoned well is generally considered an okay thing. And the reason being because there are extensive regulations and requirements that are around it. I actually just took a few minutes before this meeting to just take a quick look at what some of the provinces do. In front of me, I've got the document for the province of Saskatchewan. I mean, this is a 17-page document on the well abandonment requirements. Now, within the 17 pages, there are several other links to go to, further energy regulator recommendations on specific steps, on specific things, like if you're dealing with a sour well or with an H2S concentration greater than a certain percentage. So there is more extensive requirements there, and there's links that will take you to what those requirements are. But the main point that I was trying to make, and I'm trying to make about the requirements around what an abandoned well actually is. When you look through the table of contents in Saskatchewan for the routine well abandonment methods, there's a whole bunch of different portions to that. Then when you go to the non-routine well abandonments, there's also a whole bunch of other subcategories within that as well too. So there's a very extensive and exhaustive list of requirements in Saskatchewan to be able to abandon a well. The province of Alberta, there's a 62-page document available online, which also contains a series of hyperlinks as well to be able to access further regulations around all the different types of requirements to make sure that your abandoned well is not leaking, but if it is leaking, then what the cleanup and what the methods are, what the plan is, how you're going to deal with that, how you're going to monitor it and make sure that it doesn't continue. So it's important to note that. The province of British Columbia has 37 pages, as well as many other links to many different regulations around how you deal with an abandoned well. All these provinces have, of course, orphan well requirements and things as well too in place, but I just wanted to focus more so on the abandoned well requirements, because actually there was a neat little 3-page leave behind document from the province of Alberta about what happens once a well is abandoned. Well, in order to reclaim the land, the well has to be abandoned first. So again, that just kind of underscores the whole point that an abandoned well isn't a bad thing, which is partly why we are arguing that the preamble for this motion that the Liberals have forward that contains a lot of misinformation and misleading points. Another thing that's worth noting that's missing from the preamble was that the province of British Columbia also returned $12.8 million. So if it was not a motion intended to divide, or if it was not a motion intended to go after a specific province, then of course the motion would have contained language around the $12.8 million of the province of British Columbia returned, but we don't see that included because I would hate to speculate as to why the parliamentary secretary's motion didn't contain that language as well. Yeah, nevertheless, here we are. And of course, as I was mentioning last week or last meeting, there's the issue of wells. There's wells in Manitoba, there's wells in Ontario, there's wells in numerous provinces that would need to be part of this study if we're going to actually have a serious discussion about the issue of orphaned wells and abandoned wells. Mm-hmm. So I think getting all that information on the record was very helpful. And with that, Mr. Chair, I will move to adjourn debate on the motion for today.
Got it. Okay, that's a dilatory motion. Thank you, Mr. Patzer. We will go to a vote to adjourn debate on this motion.
The question is to adjourn debate on the motion of Ms. DeBrusen and the amendment of Ms. Goodridge. Ms. DeBrusen,
No.
Ms. Jones,
No.
Mr. Jahouri,
No.
Madame Lapointe,
No.
Monsieur Shifki,
No.
Mr. Dreeshen,
Yes.
Mr. Falk,
Yes.
Mr. Patzer,
Yes.
Ms. Stubbs,
Yes.
Monsieur Simard,
Oui.
Mr. Angus.
Yes.
That's 6 yeas, 5 nays. It carries. So the debate is
Okay,
adjourned.
the motion carries. Okay, thank you, Mr. Bruson. I have you, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
So I actually had also brought a motion to have the Minister of Natural Resources attend on Subs B. I don't know if you need me to actually read the full motion with its wording, which I do not. I'd have to pull up on my screen, but I would move that motion at this time.
Okay, I will just give, thank you for moving that motion, Mr. Bruson. Just give me a second here. Thank you, Mr. Bruson. What I am going to do, just to make colleagues are aware of the motion, I'm just going to have the clerk read out the motion, if that's okay. Thank you. Yeah, and just for the benefit of colleagues, so we have a clear understanding of the motion that Mr. Bruson has brought forward. Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As requested, the text of the motion on notice from Mr. Bruson reads, "The Standing Committee on Natural Resources invite the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources and officials from the Department of Natural Resources to testify on the Supplementary Estimates B for the fiscal year 2024-25.
Mr. Falk, you had raised. Oh, okay, sorry.
Sorry.
Before I go to you, Mr. Falk, Mr. Bruson still had the floor, so go ahead, Mr. Bruson.
Just to explain why I think that this is particularly important in this moment is that, as we all know, the time to pass these through the House will be coming up. And we have an issue with how things have been going in the House of Commons with this ongoing privilege motion that's been brought by the Conservatives and intentionally just holding down the time that we have in the House of Commons and is preventing us from getting to these important things. The reason that I mention it is that we need to actually go on with the process right now to be able to pass our Subs-B. That's actually how we will be able to flow the funding that we need for so many of the programs that are so important to our communities and to our country, especially when we're talking about issues of natural resources. And so having our minister come here is part of that process that we need to see happen. And when I talk about some of the things that we're seeing that we're actually going to be not able to fund if we don't have these Subs-Bs passed, one of them is actually extra funding that goes to critical minerals infrastructure, something that's important to people right around this table. So we need to be able to actually have the minister come and speak to that, to be able to speak to us about why it's so important that we have more funding go towards critical minerals, and what will happen. What will happen if the Conservatives succeed with what they're doing right now with blocking us in the House of Commons and preventing us from actually moving forward with the important work that we have in front of us to do. So, like I said, critical minerals is one important piece of that. We know that when we're talking about a lot of the investments that have been happening in my home province of Ontario with batteries and with auto manufacturing, a lot of them are looking to relocate what they're doing to my home province and to create really good paying jobs in my home province because of the fact that they know that we have critical minerals that are accessible here. That's one of Canada's strengths going forward in the world economy as we know it. So I think it would be really important for us to be able to have the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources come and speak to that piece of the policy and why we need to see it move forward, and to have a better sense of what the impact would be if the Conservatives actually do manage to continue to hold the House of Commons hostage and prevent us from being able to actually pass forward on the work that we're doing. I think another really important piece, and particularly when we talk about the last study we were working on clean electricity, is that SUPSB also has funding that goes to SREPs. That's one of the that is one of the really important funding sources for a lot of the work that's happening on cleaner electricity, and I see it actually landing communities right across the country. That it's helping them to actually support clean electricity work. We've just finished doing an entire study that shows us why it's so important and what we need to do. We're also, working towards clean electricity regulations. We've seen a draft of those already. So how do we get there? Well, we need to make sure if we want to have a clean electrical grid that we are doing the important work to get there. And seeing the funding for SREPs being slowed down is a problem on that, right? We can't have that happen. It's something that we know people in our different communities that we represent will want to see us do. They want to see this funding come through. It helps us to move forward. It's a really popular program, actually, really popular program. And that's a challenge that we're facing right now with the holdup. So that's something else that I think is really important that we have the minister come to speak to. Another piece that's going to be important and that has SUPSB funding is the Sustainable Jobs Secretariat. We spent a lot of time around this table talking about sustainable jobs. It was some very long nights as we moved forward on that. And so now we really need to talk about putting, as a person who's plant-based, I always say meat on the bones is a really strange term for me to be using. But there you go. We need to plant on the bones. Yeah. I love that I'm getting suggestions on it. We can say it's a Beyond Meat addition to the bones. But either way, that's not going over well either. Okay. Well, you get the idea. So we spent a lot of very, very long nights in this place working on the Sustainable Jobs Act. I think that was something that was really important for us to do, and now we need to have the funding go through for the Sustainable Jobs Secretariat. That's going to require the SUPSB to go through. And again, like right now, we're in a moment where we see that the Conservatives have been holding up all work in the House of Commons, and that means that we can't, right at this moment, we haven't passed the SUPSB yet, but having the minister come here will have us understand better what could happen if it doesn't come through, and also what the impacts will be for all of our communities and on the work that we're working on these issues about sustainable jobs, about a clean electrical grid, about our critical minerals infrastructure and things like that. It's also going to be a chance for us to try and move the process forward. And that's what I think is so important in this moment. We have 1 month left here together. And with 1 month left here together, we can get a whole lot done. And we should be getting a whole lot done. But unfortunately, we're just not, we haven't been at that point to be able to move things forward. So I'm really hoping that actually by hearing the minister after he comes, that will give a chance maybe even for the Conservatives to think a little bit about if they want to change what's happening in the House of Commons, and maybe gives them a chance to think about whether they would actually like to see the funding coming through to all of our provinces with all of this work that's happening, and also to support sustainable jobs and try and build that economy of the future for our country, because we have a really special moment that we are all facing right now to be able to do it. So I think that those are a few important pieces for us to be considering when we go forward. I think that it's been frustrating over the past many weeks in the House of Commons to not be able to get a lot of the work done that we would normally do. I know that certainly in my community, when they sent me here, it was not to listen to an extended privileged debate in the House of Commons day after day. They want us to see us pass the legislation that we need to pass, and they also want to see us making sure that the programs that we have said that we would do get the funding that they need so that they can move forward. There's no benefit in the extended delay that we're seeing right now. It's just slowing us down. So with that piece in mind, I brought this motion so that we would at least have the chance to have Minister Wilkinson come, and then maybe to provide us with extra details. I think in light of the study we had done on clean electricity, beyond the fact of talking about the importance of actually making sure the funding flows through on SREPs, I think it would be a chance for him to highlight a little bit more about how it fits in everything else that we are doing on electricity. So I thought, I think it was budget 2023, there was a pyramid in the budget that I actually thought was very helpful. And it kind of laid out everything that we're doing on electricity. So at the base, you had, regulatory, and you had carbon pricing, and then you kind of had the next layer up, and it had like different funding sources through the CIB, Canada Infrastructure Bank, and that kind of thing. And
J'ai peut-être une question.
I have a question. I have a great deal of affection for my friend Julie. I really, really like her. So I would just like to have a clarification. I understand what she's saying, and she's right that the work in the House, the business of the House, is paralyzed. Many bills are not moving forward. But around this table, would we be in favor of hearing the minister? But we do not want to paralyze the work of our committee either. So I would encourage Julie to ask for a vote on her motion immediately so we can be more effective and efficient, and perhaps her intervention may well produce some positive results for everybody. I understand, and it's very praiseworthy what she's attempting to do, but perhaps she could apply what she's saying in her speech, and she could put her motion to a vote. Call for a vote now.
Point of order, which there's some debate there, but I did want to give you the leeway because I am hearing through translation and wanted to see where you're getting. I will turn the floor back to Mr. Bruson, who has moved a motion and is providing the rationale for their motion. So I'll go back to you. And I do have a speaking order for other members who want to speak. I've been generating one, so just raise your hand and get you on the list for debate. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Bruson.
No,
Sorry,
yeah.
point of order?
Oh, now we got a point of order from Mr.
You
Angus.
said you had a speakers list. Could you just read out the list?
Sir, I have Mr. Falk, and then I have you, Mr. Angus, then Monsieur Samart.
I thought you said you had me second.
Sorry, I have you after Mr. Angus. After Mr. Falk. Yeah, my apologies. I got Mr. Falk, then you, Mr. Angus. I'll go back to you, Mr. Bruson.
OK. Regarde, ça me semble comme il y en a beaucoup de gens.
We have a lot of people who want to speak one after the other on this motion, and I quite agree with Mr. Simard. It's a simple motion, but it seems to me that there are a lot of people who are seeking the floor to speak on it. I think that the reason why I would speak a bit more about it is this, and normally I wouldn't speak at length on a motion like this, but we see that things are a bit different from ordinary, and we see what is happening in the House. We would like to have the opportunity to speak to that, but also to have a vote. Now we just don't know what is going to happen. Legislation isn't moving. Everything is slowed down. And that is the reason that I find that I have to give a bit more explanation about the reasons why I have moved this motion. It's because it's not like the times in the past when we would move a motion of this nature. So I appreciate Mr. Simard's question. What's different this time? And this time it's important because there are other experiences that we have lived through and other choices. I started by speaking about this, and normally this is a motion that would be very ordinary and would be adopted very quickly. We would see that we have the funding for all the projects that we envisage, but this is a different time. It's a different moment. We would want to understand why we need funding and what happens if we don't have that funding for entities. There would be funding that would be missing, and I think everybody around the table would be understanding why critical minerals are so very important and why we would need to have that to promote our economy here in Canada. So that's the economic reason, but it's also important, or they are also important for technology itself, for the technology that we need when you want to have a green economy. I'm not too sure what is the proper word to use here. A clean economy, a green economy. You want to have sustainable employment in that economy. Where I live, Ontario, and in the riding that I represent, there are many manufacturers who come to my area in Ontario. Automotive, there's a big automotive industry. What? So, there's another word that was coming to mind, but the companies that come to my area need this type of critical mineral in their industry. We want clean electricity. Well, we've worked on that. We've put forward regulations with respect to clean electricity, and that will help communities have sources of clean electricity that would be more reliable. Thank you. More reliable and more affordable. We've just finished a study on that, a study about that, and we have to listen to what the minister has to say about that, how funding will allow us to build a more sustainable, reliable, cleaner electrical grid. That's two things that I wanted to say. But here's something else. It's so important for us to have the minister here because there are funds in SUPSP which are there to promote sustainable jobs. We have spent nights, many long nights here, trying. Well, that's funny because I hear Mr. Falk who's saying not so many long nights. Well, maybe not many long nights, but we've worked hard on that. And we worked on the bill that dealt with sustainable jobs. And we wanted to be able to fund the Secretariat. The Secretariat for Sustainable Jobs I just wonder what we're going to do then, now that this bill is law in Canada, but you have to bring the parts together to be able to continue. If you don't have the funding in place for the Secretariat, say, or we really won't know how we will be able to continue. So that is why I find it so important that
it's very frustrating what we've been witnessing in the House of Commons. It's very frustrating to see that we can't move quickly on Subs B. And I would very much ask that all of the members around this table bring the minister here to answer all of those questions, to talk to us about Subs B. And then maybe if I can also take it as a moment to encourage everyone around this table to go back and ask that we find a way to break the impasse in the House of Commons, because it's not serving our communities and it's
Point
not
of order, Mr.
serving
Chair.
what we're trying to do.
Mr. Bruson, we have a point of order from
okay.
Mr. Patzer. Mr. Patzer on the point of order.
Perhaps I can help the parliamentary secretary right here. The path forward would simply be for your own government to comply with the will of Parliament, which was reflected by all three parties of the opposition,
okay,
and
Mr.
comply with that.
Mr. Patzer, that's not a point of order, it's a point of debate. And if you'd like the floor, I'll add you to the list. I appreciate you trying to help, but the help I need from colleagues is to use a point of order for a point of order and use your debate time to debate, but I appreciate that. Thank you. Mr. Bruson,
Thank you.
back to you.
Well, I appreciate that helpfulness, but I'm not actually here to debate the privilege debate that's in the House of Commons. I'm just here to point out why we need it to move forward. And so with that, I'm really truly encouraging everyone to make sure that we do have the minister here to speak to Subs B, and that we actually move forward to pass the Subs B. I think I've highlighted some of the reasons why the Subs B will be so important to all of our communities and to our country at large. So with that, I hope that I have the support from everyone here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bruson. Now I'll go to Mr. Falk. Mr. Falk, you have the floor.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Ms. DeBruson there for putting this motion on the table. I think it's mostly a good motion that we invite the minister to come to committee, which is his job, to defend the estimates and the subs, and for us to review it with him. And so I think it's prudent that we do that. And I'm also very hopeful that the minister will come with the documents that will help answer a lot of questions that the House has been seized with the last several weeks. The unredacted documents, he could bring them here on his way to the RCMP station, and we could get a preview of them, and we can ask the questions that need to be asked to find out why $400 million of Sustainable Development Technology Canada funds were distributed to SDTC board members and their companies. So but you know what? I think to have the minister here to answer some of those questions would be fantastic. And I think that's something that Canadians would want us to do. But on the issue of the reports and studies that she says that we've completed, we actually haven't completed them. We keep getting the agenda switched around here by the Liberals. We start on things, we get witnesses cut short during the study, and then they produce a report. We start doing the report, and before we can even approve the recommendations, we jump to some other subjects. So we're just kind of willy-nilly jumping all over the map here in this committee, and we don't ever finish anything. We start a lot of things, but we don't ever finish. And it would be nice if we would finish something soon. And that we actually produce results for Canadians, and something that we can move forward with. But I think the motion being as good as it is, it's missing a date. So I don't know when she's planning on inviting the minister. Is it before Christmas? Is it next week? Is it in the new year in February? It's missing a date. So. So it would be nice if that date would be provided as well, and it maybe could be included in the motion at the minister's earliest convenience, So if she's working on that now with her staff, that would be great to establish a date. With that, Mr. Chair, I would move that we now adjourn debate and we bring it to a motion.
Bring it to
Bring it to a vote, sorry.
to adjourn debate.
To adjourn debate
Okay.
and bring it to. Go to vote. Yes.
Which you can't
So-
force either, so.
So if you would, do you want to adjourn debate or
On the
take the motion?
On the motion, and let's vote on the motion.
Yes, so there's other speakers on the list. So once we exhaust those speakers, not many,
Well, I
we
think,
can
I think
go to
we've
a vote.
Practiced before that when somebody moves to adjourn debate, then we vote.
If
on-
we adjourn debate, then we completely, this motion, we will not be voting on the motion. We will be adjourning debate on the motion and we will be,
We'll vote on the adjournment and then we'll vote on the motion.
I'll let the clerk step in to clarify, Mr. Falk. I don't think what you want is possible. I think
No.
it can go in reverse.
Okay,
A
sure,
vote
let's go.
on, a vote, if we continue on with the debate and if the debate collapses, we can get to a vote. As mentioned, after you, we have two speakers and I'm thinking they're looking forward to engage and then move forward. So just want to
Point of
clarify,
order,
you're
so
not
then
asking
who are
for
our
that.
two speakers?
All right.
Me and who
So
else?
you, Mr. Angus, we have you.
Yeah.
And as of now, we have Mr. Smart.
Okay.
And then
Is that
I
it?
don't have any other hands up yet, so I'm going to
That's it,
go
then I'll vote. Yeah. Yeah.
so far.
Okay.
But it's at the will of the committee. Members can raise
That's
their hand
okay.
at any time. So I don't know. I'll leave it up to you folks. But Mr. Falk is done. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your generosity, Mr. Falk. I'm going to go to Mr. Angus, who has the floor.
Thank you. I had wanted to know because I was concerned that we were going into another filibuster, and I'm really not interested in filibusters. If there's no filibuster, then I'm ready to vote. If there's going to be a filibuster, I will get the floor and push to adjourn debate. But I think the minister should come. It's standard practice. Sup B. This is what we have done. So I think let's bring the minister and carry on.
Okay, thank you,
Parfait.
Mr.
Excellent.
Angus. And just one sec, I just want to get my earpiece on, Mr. Smart. Mr. Smart, go ahead. You have the floor now.
J'étais le prochain intervenant.
I was the next speaker, but I agree with Charlie. Let's vote on this and move on to something else.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smart. So I'm going to take one last look. It doesn't look like we have any other speakers on the motion brought forward by Ms. DeBrusen.
Doesn't have to be a recorded vote, you can just ask them.
Okay, all in favor? All in favor of Mr. Brusen's motion? Okay, wow, great committee. Looks like we have unanimous vote on that. Okay, and I'm going to go to Monsieur Samard. You have the floor, sir.
Je voudrais en
I would like to take this opportunity to bring forward a motion that I gave notice of last Monday. I'll read it very quickly and I'll explain the rationale behind it. That given the PBO's statements in the Trans Mountain Pipeline System Report 2024 released on November 8, 2024, the committee expresses concern about the financial uncertainty regarding the government's ability to sell the Trans Mountain Pipeline System at a price that avoids a net loss to taxpayers and asks the chairman to report back to the House as soon as possible. Let me explain, Chair. You know, we heard the parliamentary budget officer who came to speak to us about his 2022 report. At that time, it was $21.4 billion that was committed by the government. It has now risen to $34 billion. The PBO spoke very clearly, unequivocally, and said that the federal government is moving towards an irrecuperable, an unrecoverable net loss. I believe it is our duty to discuss this matter. I would have brought it to the House, but my colleague for whom I have a great deal of esteem, Madame DeBrusen, said that it was not the PBO's work to bring that type of consideration. I do agree with her, but it is my political concern. So, given the facts, Quebec is set to lose about $4 billion. We don't know if we will be able to meet our GHG reduction levels, our targets, given this Trans Mountain pipeline. I think that such an infrastructure might be possible over a 40-year period of time or a longer period of time, given new technologies, given our energy problems and the crisis of climate change. I think that that is in itself a justification for having a debate in the House on it. But we have to present to Canadians a statement of the facts, what the situation is. I know my colleagues would want to inform Canadians, and it's up to them to present the facts. And also, the government has a duty to outline the risks for the oil sector. It's an economic sector which is making record profits. So for all these reasons, and in view of the fact that we were not able to deal with it directly in the House at this moment, given that the report was tabled by the PBO in the House. So I believe it should be a matter of our discussing it here in committee.
Thank you, Monsieur Simard. And now I will go to Mr. Angus, who's next on our speaking order.
Thank you, Chair. Normally, I believe we should finish a study and present all the reports at the same time, and that's a normal practice at committee. However, I've been very concerned, and people are aware, I've been very concerned about the decision around TMX, the cost, and of course, the implications that it has for the government's proposed climate agenda, which I think it crosses itself out. And I think that as much as we are still working through the TMX report, the TMX report has produced enough evidence that is of concern that the public is going to want to be aware of. So I support my colleague. I think it's a pretty straightforward motion, so I'm ready to vote.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Angus. Now I will go to Mr. Johari. Mr. Johari, you have the floor.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank our colleague for bringing the motion. So we seem to have just concluded the study, and through this study we spent a lot of time trying to get an understanding of different perspectives from the challenges that we had in being able to get this project done, and I'm glad the project is done. The length of time it took, the cost, the changing cost, and the challenges, COVID. We heard a lot. We also heard from a different perspective, and I believe it is only fair for all those testimonies and all those perspectives to be put into a draft report that we could look at. When I sit back and I look at it from a lens, and I'm a half glass full guy, and I look at it from a lens, and I said, yes, there were challenges. There were circumstances that we could not foresee, such as COVID. Probably we could have done a better job, and I leave that to the conclusion that hopefully we'll draw and recommendation in the report that will be drafted hopefully very soon. We could have foreseen some of these had we done a bit more due diligence, but the bottom line is there are elements that we really need to be able to consider, and and I'm looking also forward to the lesson learned in that report. And when it came to economic benefit, we heard a lot. We heard a lot about the economic benefit that it has to Alberta, the economic benefit that it has to GDP, and also the point of view from PBO, and the fact that we are now pivoting on a PBO report that, well, PBO report said that we're going to lose money if we sell now, and use a set of parameters such as the tolls, such as the utilization, such as the rate that was used, and those were assumptions. And the scope of the report did not include any cost analysis. The scope of the report just looked at a present value of the sale, or the present value of the project given certain criteria. And at no points, I believe, the PBO came back and said that, you know what, the government of Canada and the Canadians are not going to benefit from this, even when we divest from it. So we looked at the sensitivity analysis that the PBO did, whether it was, and it was at around 2.5% up and down, both for the rate that they had used, both for the toll rate as well as the utilization. And we said, we clearly saw that on the upside of contracts, this could add easily another $4 or $5 billion, which puts this project on a very, very positive positive position, even though the challenges and some of the costs that should have been incurred, that was incurred. So jumping to a conclusion and saying that, well, PBO came here and said that we're not going to make any money. Let's go report it to the House. I think that also undermined the great work that this committee has done, the preparation that so many of our team members have prepared, and the work that the analysts are going to do regardless in coming in, looking at the facts, presenting the facts, citing the support for it, coming up with recommendation, us getting together and reviewing the recommendation, and coming up and lesson learned, and also the opportunity to really look at all aspects of this, and just jumping the gun and going to the House and saying, well, you know what, let's acknowledge it. I think it's also unfair to the committee, also to the analysts that they've been so diligently listening and collecting all this information and translating in this information. So I like to present all those facts, that there's a spectrum of point of views. We've heard from a group of stakeholders, some supportive, some had concern. Those needs to be properly collected and properly presented. I believe the analysts are going to do an amazing job. I've been around for 9 years now, and I've worked with some of the analysts who are sitting around the table, and I haven't seen anything but great work from them, and I'm looking forward to the report. So jumping in conclusion and ignoring all of those facts makes me very uncomfortable, because now we could say what we've heard is good enough. Let's jump to the conclusion, and let's forego the process that we have developed and we have agreed, and it has worked in the past. So on my part, Mr. Chair, I don't think this is the right path to go. Thank you.
Thank
J'ai
you.
juste une petite
Mr.
point de
Zouari, hold on
règlement.
just
I just have a question. I want to specify my intentions. I have the greatest respect in the world for the analysts. They do very important work for us. I take their work seriously. I read very carefully the documents that are prepared by the analysts. And I wouldn't want anybody to think that the motion I am moving in any way takes away or undermines the wonderful work that they do. I want to make that clear to my colleague and also to the analysts who do great work.
Okay, thank you for your point of order, and for the clarity. Not a point of order, but I got it through translation and what you were asking for, the clarity of what your intent was. Thank you, and now we'll go to the next speaker. That's Mr. Patzer. Mr. Patzer, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I too would just like to offer my support for the motion. I do think that It is fair for this committee to express its concern with the fact that the government is about to is set to take a loss on the TMX pipeline. We heard clearly from the PBO. We have also heard from other witnesses and stakeholders the fact that the valuation of the pipeline will also be dependent on things such as policy that the government puts forward, and how things like an emissions cap will be problematic for somebody looking to buy the pipeline. Current existing regulations such as the Impact Assessment Act, the carbon tax, the liberal fuel regulations are all, amongst many other things, are all detrimental to any company that would be looking to purchase this pipeline. So I think it's fair to for this committee to express its concern to the House, and I support this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Patzer. Now I'll go to Ms. Stubbs. Ms. Stubbs, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to add my voice also to supporting this motion and what Monsieur Simard is arguing in terms of the importance that we all unite about this concern that the independent, nonpartisan, non-political parliamentary budget officer has said. I would just say to my colleague, Mr. Joaouri, you made the comment about wanting to learn from this about the future, but as my colleague Jeremy Patzer has just outlined, of course, the combination of the carbon tax, various anti-development policies, C-69, where Conservatives warned about all of the things the Supreme Court then said, which has still not been sufficiently remedied, including the job-killing oil and gas cap, unilateral offshore drilling bans, a tanker ban that the federal government is being sued over by the most locally impacted Indigenous community, the Lax Kw'alaam. All of these things all together mean that there will not be more pipelines proposed by the private sector in this country because, unfortunately, after 9 years, the consequences of this, the Liberals' policy agenda, are an absolute collapse in confidence in Canada as a place where the private sector can build big infrastructure and major projects where they create jobs and powerful paychecks and send all this revenue into multiple levels of government to provide the programs and the services that all Canadians value in every part of this country. So it absolutely does behoove us, I think, to act on the concerns and to show as a committee that we also share concerns about taxpayers being made whole and being paid back for their tax dollars being spent on a pipeline that never had to happen and never should have happened if the federal government had just given the private sector proponent the legal and political certainty it needed to go ahead and build the Trans Mountain expansion that their own government approved, although they keep saying it's a pipeline built for Alberta, but they approved it in the national interest. That's what it's about. And then of course, dithered and delayed and didn't actually take the action that the federal government had, which could have allowed the private sector to go ahead and build it on their dime, on schedule. It would be fully functional. Here we are. It's a decade late, or it's half a decade late. It is the costs increase to build it have risen 360%. 360% since the original estimations. And the PBO and various witnesses have clearly demonstrated that there remains uncertainty for the kinds of things that purchasers would need to know about, like the tolls, which won't be set until 2025. And also with respect to colleagues, yes, we did this study on the Trans Mountain expansion, but they may recall we actually didn't even have all of the witnesses here who are proponents, who are groups interested in potentially purchasing the pipeline. So it's really not true that we did, a comprehensive, thorough analysis at that committee. It's just not the case. And none of this had to happen or go this way, but that is the mess the Liberals have made, and they can lie in it and answer to their own voters about the collision in the things they say they care about, which I'm sure, Monsieur Simard and Mr. Angus will have more to say about. But these are all the reasons that Conservatives absolutely support Mr. Simard's motion and believe this has to happen. I think it would be shocking that there's anybody elected sitting around this table who doesn't think that we should take what the independent, nonpartisan, political budget watchdog has said very seriously, since it is the government, the Liberals, that put taxpayers in this position, and don't seem to have been able to figure it out or have controlled the cost themselves or in the Crown Corporation that they run and continue to put money in, and so therefore we do have to have. Sorry for tapping the mic there. If I've had an impact on the translators. So it makes the point that we should support our concern being expressed, and we should heed the words of the parliamentary budget officer. That's at least a core responsibility that we owe every single Canadian since the federal government forced them to be owners of major energy infrastructure, whether those Canadians liked it or not. And again, Conservatives believe in expanding Canadian energy, in ensuring there is crucial energy infrastructure built by the private sector in all directions, ensuring that we expand Canadian energy products and technology to our allies and around the world to help lower emissions globally and to help energy security domestically in Canada, and also energy security with our allies who clearly in the various conflicts going around the world need Canada more than ever and keep asking for Canada, except the Prime Minister keeps turning away. So for all those reasons, that's why we do support Monsieur Simard's motion, and out of our concern that taxpayers deserve these answers too.
Thank you, Ms. Stubbs. We'll now go to Mr. Bruson. Mr. Bruson, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It's an interesting conversation as it's kind of unfolding. Look, I'll start by saying I agree largely with the points that were raised by Mr. Jauhari, which is we haven't completed the study that we had engaged in here. And it seems like such a strange thing for us to be suggesting that it would be a good idea to put forward one report, basically just one piece of the evidence that came in our study, and put that into the House to debate when we've heard so much else over the course of this study that it would undermine, I think, the value of all of those other witnesses and all of the other pieces of information that we got, because the PBO officer was also very clear that he had a very limited mandate as to what he can look at and what he doesn't look at. And so if we sent this to the House of Commons immediately, without the rest of the context from the study, then we're actually missing a lot of the other important pieces that were put before us by witnesses. You know, we heard from witnesses in detail about things like some of the extra complications about this project. I mean, we heard about obviously the impact of the pandemic, but also apparently that there was archaeological findings along the way that required attention, and that added to costs. There was an atmospheric river that also had an impact on the construction of it. Then was also mentioned that there were many other projects happening at the same time. So challenges when it comes to labor and supply of the items required. There were issues about the challenges of geography. So all of those kinds of pieces were being brought forward to us by witnesses. Not all of that's reflected in the PBO report. And so we would just be sending a report to the House of Commons without all of that extra context. And it seems to me, why bother having all the witnesses come if we're just going to take the PBO report and send it back? I think that the value in doing a study and bringing to bear everything that we have to say, and from everything that we have heard, that brings a value to it. And that's why we do the study. So, from my sense, this isn't just about putting forward the PBO report. If we actually care for a fulsome study about the TMX pipeline, and we did care enough about having a fulsome study on the TMX pipeline that we all agreed to do the study. And we all called witnesses, we all asked those important questions of witnesses, then I think we should be also making sure that the voices of those witnesses, the reports from those witnesses, their evidence and our findings and the analysis that would come from the work of the analysts, the recommendations, all of that should go together with it. It doesn't make sense to me to take one piece. If we were to do that, we could have brought any report or any witness's statement and sent that to the House of Commons separately without all the other context. But it's missing things. Like I was particularly fascinated by the part about how union labor had not been involved by the private sector beforehand. To me, that's a huge change. Yeah. Actually, like and impacts the workers and as Ms. Stubbs said, it would potentially impact costs. But I mean, these are the kinds of things about, our supporting union labor in working on these things. I hadn't realized that actually. So that was, but I don't think that would be really reflected in the PBO report and analysis either. So if you send the report without that kind of context, you're missing some of the factors and the pieces that would be going into the whole piece. We also had, economists who came forward and provided lots of context as to what they saw as the value of the TMX pipeline. So their opinions that differed, by the way, like they didn't all agree. That kind of context, we would be missing bringing that forward. And I think that that's something important too for people to talk about, because as a PBO officer himself said, and I think as Monsieur Simard recognized when he was speaking, the PBO officer was talking about how he was working from very strict parameters. So I don't know why we would choose to keep ourselves to those strict parameters when we're referring this to the House of Commons. I would think we'd be in a better place if we put the whole study. And then we got to have all of this go forward, and we could debate all of the pluses and minuses about the costs and how this all came to be. So that's, I think, one important part. I do want to also respond a bit to what we heard from Ms. Stubbs, because she said, I believe, that Conservatives believe in Canada's energy products and exports. So do we. So does the Liberal government. In fact, we have been very much supporting the development of energy in Canada. So, like, when you're talking about things like the offshore wind bill, like when we passed that bill about offshore wind, then we were actually, like, that was the whole C-49, all of that debate about Newfoundland and Labrador and Nova Scotia and offshore wind. That's about an entire industry, an energy industry right here in our country. It's new and it's important, and it'll have a really big impact on Atlantic Canada. And frankly, the Conservatives were not supporting us in moving forward with those bills. So I just want to very much counter the idea that our current Liberal government isn't supporting energy. We actually put forward that bill working with the Atlantic provinces to be able to make sure that moved forward. And I think it's a really important thing that we did that. If you want to talk about, our support for energy products, like if you look at nuclear, that is an important piece that we've been moving forward. I do want to talk about, because I think that it's easy to chirp back at me when I'm talking about these things, except for that's
Sorry, issue of relevancy?
I was responding to what Ms. Stubbs said.
Mr. Bruson, I'm asking you to hold. Mr. Angus, do you have a point of order?
Well, the issue of relevancy was whether or not we refer what the PBO had said, which, and I agree, is under strict parameters. It has nothing to do with nuclear or wind. So I think we have to decide, and it also does not mean that we are not, and unless maybe we need clarification from Mr. Simard, I don't believe his motion is meaning we're not going to finish our study and pass that on with all the relevant information.
Thank you, Mr. Angus. Mr. Smart, when he gets the floor, I'm sure will provide rationale for all that. So thank you for pointing that out. And Mr. Bruson, I'll go, before I go back to you, Mr. Bruson, I'm going to go to, I think I have a point of order, but I'll go to Ms. Stubbs on the point of order. Go ahead.
Yes, and since Charlie just got to give his input, I just thought I'd get in on that action.
Point of order or,
Well, since the parliamentary secretary referenced me, I'm going to just also say, yeah, I guess what I'm confused about is there's nothing whatsoever in Monsieur Smart's motion that precludes our committee from finishing this study and putting out a report. Like, so this entire thing is some sort of bizarre straw man argument that
So,
is that the right?
Ms. Stubbs, on your...
So I just am reinforcing, maybe I just
Yes.
used that in the wrong context,
So,
but I'm just
folks,
reinforcing what
I'll
MP
ask-
Angus said, and also
I'll ask
since Julie mentioned my name.
folks here to use point of orders for point of orders on procedural matters. I know Mr. Angus did ask on relevancy, and I think Ms. Stubbs was alluding to that, and Mr. Simard will comment on that if he feels that way. But Mr. Bruson, you do have the floor, and I would ask you, as colleagues have concerns to the relevancy of the argument you're making, because I think you're going somewhere with that. I'll go back to you to continue on.
Thank you. No, and I appreciate that. Look, the reason why, Mr. Chair, I was responding to those pieces is that I feel like there's a bit of a sleight of hand that happens where the Conservatives say, well, you know, this Liberal government is anti-energy and that's what this is all about. And that was what was actually just said. And so I was just responding to say, in fact, our Liberal government has been supporting energy production, energy exports here from our country. And so I didn't want to leave that unanswered just like that. I feel like that is, so I felt like I had to respond to that as a piece of it. Now, I could go for quite a while, and I won't, at least at this moment, go on for quite a while about this, but I do think that if I'm going to respond to the challenge that the Liberal government doesn't believe in the development of Canadian energy, offshore wind, nuclear, critical minerals, what we're doing with hydrogen, we're doing so much in so many different ways, and we are having agreements with international partners, and we are supporting our allies, that I do think that it's very much a misnomer to say it in that way. However, I do think that if I will just also clarify the point about the study versus a PBO report, I, along with everybody around this table, had very much agreed that we should do this study on TMX. I think it is an important study, and I agreed with it, voted for it. But I do feel that sending the PBO report to the House of Commons without the context of the full study, like it just leads us onto a path where we're going to have one debate that is only, one page of the whole report, essentially, in the way it works out. And I think that my argument is that it wouldn't be the best way to go ahead. I think that we should complete the report. We could do that. We actually have the time ahead of us right now that we could do that, finish the TMX report, and then we can actually put it all, and the PBO report is part of it, because the PBO officer came and spoke. So I would say very much that that's where I'm coming at from all of this. Now, if I understand correctly, the motion that was brought by Monsieur Simard, I'm reading it in English, was that given the PBO's statements in the Trans Mountain Pipeline System Report 2024, released on November 8th, 2024, the committee expresses concern about the financial uncertainty regarding the government's ability to sell the Trans Mountain Pipeline system at a price that avoids a net loss to taxpayers, and asks the chairman to report back to the House as soon as possible. And what I would be proposing is an amendment to that motion to be replacing the words express concern about the financial uncertainty regarding replacing those words with recommends, and then to also add should do everything in its, so should do everything in its, following the word government. And I'm moving that amendment to the motion.
J'ai juste perdu des.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize, and I would ask my colleague Julie to repeat because I lost a little bit of what she was saying.
I think I need to see it written. I couldn't follow it.
Me too. The way it was read out doesn't make any sense.
I'm going to suspend here so we can get a written copy out to everybody in appropriate translation. I will say probably around 10 minutes or so. So we'll suspend. Okay, we are back from our suspension. Everybody should have a copy, including yourself, Mr. Shifke, with the amendment that's been placed by Ms. DeBrusen. Mr. Brusen, I'm going to pass the floor over to you to continue on.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to be clear on what the recommendation reads, what the change is, and I'm sorry, I'm reading as we do to make sure that the French looks exactly like the English. To me, it does. Okay, so the original motion was that given the PBO's statements in the Trans Mountain Pipeline System Report 2024, released on November 8th, 2024, the committee expresses concern about the financial uncertainty regarding the government's ability to sell the Trans Mountain Pipeline system at a price that avoids a net loss to taxpayers, and asks the chairman to report back to the House as soon as possible. The motion would read, if my amendment is adopted, and I'm hoping that it will be, the amendment that I have proposed would be that it would read that given the PBO's statements in the Trans Mountain Pipeline System Report 2024, released on November 8th, 2024, the committee recommends the government should do everything in its ability to sell the Trans Mountain Pipeline at a price that avoids a net loss to taxpayers, and asks the chairman to report back to the House as soon as possible. Alors, juste pour M. Simard.
For Mr. Simard, if you see the change, we're not speaking about our concerns. We changed the part that the committee is concerned by the incapacity of the government to sell the TMX system at a price that would avoid a net loss to taxpayers, and asks the chairman to report back to the House as soon as possible. What I am proposing is this change that the committee recommends the government should do everything in its ability to sell the Trans Mountain pipeline system at a price that avoids a net loss to taxpayers, and asks the chairman to report back to the House as soon as possible.
A little bit stronger in some ways because it actually recommends something that the government does rather than just sharing an expressed concern. And I think that that's quite a bit. And then it also has a bit of a bolder statement of, rather than just kind of expressing an opinion or a concern, it actually says what we think the government should do. So to me, it's a strengthening in the wording of the motion. I will say it's not in my amendments, but I will just ask, it seems like a strange translation to me in even the original that president was translated to chairman. In the English version, like usually would just say chair. I'm not going to take a huge issue on that, and I expect that that won't be a big issue for members as a committee if we went back and looked at that. I know we're not talking about that amendment. It wasn't in the amendment I proposed. It's just unusual language I'm not used to seeing. But going to the main point of what I was saying, while I continue to have very grave concerns, as I've expressed, about the idea that we would be sending this report back without having our full study and our full ability to put all of the witness opinions and our recommendations and all of that before the House. And actually, I'd say it's kind of funny because in some ways this could almost have been a recommendation.
Exactly.
Like when I'm looking at it, could have almost been a recommendation to our study that we could have put to the House and had the government respond to. However, if we're going to be in a position where we're talking about putting something directly to the House, skipping a step of our study, it would seem to me that this is stronger wording that better expresses what I think the committee is looking at, which is we don't want to see taxpayers, have a net loss on this. So these amendments would share our joint belief that I think there would be agreement around this entire table that we don't want to see taxpayers have a net loss, and so we believe that the government should do everything in its ability that when the pipeline is sold, the Trans Mountain pipeline, that it's sold at a price that avoids such a net loss. I feel that would go further. Again, I'm going to restate my position. I think we'd be in a better place if we did the full study and just had this as a recommendation to the study rather than setting it separately. I have still grave concerns about sending this report, just a PBO report, back to the House of Commons without taking into account all of the work that we have done on this study. I think it loses a lot of its context, and it loses a lot of, frankly, points that could go either way in this debate. Like, it's not like, the evidence goes in many places. Different opinions have been expressed about it, but it would give us a chance to actually raise all of those parts of the debate as well, that given the PBO's more limited mandate wouldn't be put forward if we just put forward that study. But if we were in a position where we were going to have to go with just having the report go forward, I think that these amendments make a stronger statement. And so that would be my recommendation, is that we try and pick up from there to go with this stronger wording. I'm hoping that the other people around this table, the other members, will support this and agree that this makes the kind of positive change that at least allows us to make a statement rather than just an expression of concern or an expression of opinion. So I think with that, I'm hoping that I have made a convincing argument for everyone here that this new amended wording, if we're going to have to go ahead with this motion, is something worth considering. And I will put it back to you, Mr. Chair, with a note that I would think we might want to change as a translation issue almost the word chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bruson. I think the clerks caught that, a note on that. And I'm going to go to the next speaker on our list is Mr. Jawari. Mr. Jawari, you have the floor on the amendment.
Yes, it is on the amendment. So thank you, Mr. Chair. During our recess, I had an opportunity to talk to MP Simard and try to really get an understanding of how can we work together and what is the real reason that a motion like this has been put forward and we are not following the standard procedure that we followed to be able to get the report. And MP Simard said, I want to be able to debate this in the House. Well, I want to debate this in the House as well. And one of the ways that we could debate in this in the House is through, opposition day motion. Unfortunately, as everyone knows, we are stuck in a privilege for the last 2 months, and then there's not, as I understand, there's no opposition day allocation left for blocks. So this in his view, this is a way that he would be able to get concurrence and be able to debate in the House. Okay. Fair enough. So now that we understand the underlying reason why MP Simard's with this is now it's taking a step to see how we can work together. Okay. And I think the recommendation that the PS De Bruzen has recommended is that fine, delicate balance. I like the way that she qualified by saying that we should finish the report and we should put this as a recommendation in the report, hence the word, the elimination of express concern about the financial uncertainty regarding and replacing it by the recommendation, because this is going to be a recommendation in the report. If it's not going to be, I'll be one who putting it as a recommendation in the report, because that was the conclusion that everybody, I think all the members across the table have said that we don't want to show loss. And we've heard from the minister that says, you know what, we will not lose money. And we've heard from the CEO of TMX that's saying that, you know what, we are going to be the smart seller. And we've also heard from PBO that if you look at other elements, other benefit of it, Government of Canada, and as such, Canadians are not going to lose the money. Okay? And therefore, seeing this as a recommendation is something that we would have, I see would have put in the report. Then we come into should do everything in its power, which is something that, again, would have gone as a recommendation in the report. So when you look at the amendment, which removes basically express concern about the financial uncertainty regarding and replace it with recommend, and then add the line should do everything in its ability, basically now we are taking a recommendation, which will be in the report. Our side is supporting that. And now it's also giving MP Simard that vehicle that he was looking for to be able to run a concurrence and be able to debate it in the House. Unfortunately, in my opinion, that falls into the hands of opposition to be able to, keep this filibuster go. So, you know what? I believe the amendment is an amendment that's acceptable. It is a recommendation. It gives you that vehicle that you're looking for, and I understand. And hopefully, if we agree, and then we are having that concurrence debate, I'll be in the House and I'll be participating on that debate. So I would strongly suggest that we support this amendment and look at it as a recommendation. Still do the report and give MP Simard the vehicle that he's looking forward to be able to run the debate that he wants to run in the House. And I personally commit, I will participate in it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Jawari. And I'm just going to take a look to see if there's any on the amendment that's placed. If there's any other members, sorry, go ahead.
I think we'd all be ready to vote on the amendment. I understand what my colleague has said.
Clear? Okay. So we're on the amendment, and everybody has got a copy. It's been well discussed, so we will proceed to a vote. Mr. Clerk?
Is there a need for recorded?
Is there, if I could look across the room, is there a need for a recorded vote? Is it unanimous support for this? No? Okay, yeah, I think we need a recorded vote.
The question is on the amendment put forward by Madame de Bruzen. Mr. Bruzen?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Johari?
Yes.
Madame Lapointe?
We.
Mr. Shifke?
Oui.
Mr. Dreeshen?
No.
Mr. Falk?
No.
Mr. Patzer?
No.
Ms. Stubbs?
No.
Mr. Simard?
No.
Mr. Angus?
No.
It's defeated, sir.
Okay, that amendment is defeated, and now I'll put you on the list, Mr. Smart. I have a speaking list on the main still established, because we had jumped to the amendment. I can add you to that if you'd like on the main motion. I'll add you to it, okay? Mr. Johari, I had you next on the main speaking list. Do you still wish to speak on the main?
Can I yield to you, or you're not ready? So I actually had hoped that we would come to the consensus because it gave everyone what the opportunity that they were looking for. I think to me that wordsmithing is the same as the challenge that we were going through when we had a preamble for the abandoned well motion. But here we are. So if I have a opportunity to move another amendment, and the amendment reads, add the following after to the House with, and the Government of Canada provide a response to this report pursuant to Standing Order 109. And the way it would read is as follows. That, given the PBO statement in the Trans Mountain Pipeline System Report 2024, released on November 8, 2024, the committee expressed concern about the financial uncertainty regarding the government's ability to sell the Trans Mountain Pipeline System at a price.
Petite question de règlement.
On a question, point of order.
Go to, go ahead, Mr. Smart.
Vous allez aisément.
You will certainly understand that with the content of the amendment, that my colleague seems to be moving. It's difficult for me to grasp it just through interpretation. So I would ask my Liberal friends, they have denounced the filibuster that is ongoing in the House, and yet this purchase of a pipeline that is of great import for the government, and yet it seems to me that the decision should be a concern for all here who cares. This should be something that is taken into consideration. All I'm after here is simply and only to get a debate in the House on the matter. This notion of improving the motion that I have brought in is not really what is the concern. Is this something just to suspend the debate? I find it rather strange that this would be brought forward at the last minute by Mr. Johari. There's something that would have to be accepted or refused, because I have to say that just with the interpretation, I cannot follow.
Yes, so I was listening intently and trying to catch everything you said, Monsieur Simard, on your point of not a point of order, but on getting an idea of what is happening here and a point of clarification. So, Mr. Jawari, I am going to go back to you.
Point of order?
You are in the process. Yes, Mr. Angus. On a point of order.
Because I was really hoping we could get some things cleared up so we could move on, but it doesn't look like we are. Are we suspending at 6:30?
Well, we have 5 minutes. We might.
Okay, I just want to know what our timeline is.
Yeah, we have. In the next 5 minutes, if we can get something done, it's up to colleagues if we how we'd like to proceed. After
Perfectly
that.
willing. I just want to know at 6:30 that we, and then we can pick it up on Monday.
All right, so I'm going to go back to Mr. Jawari on where you're at.
Thank you. So if Monsieur Simard allow me, and I will read it this time a bit slower, the amended motion, and I will highlight after the section that I'm talking about, and then we can take it's being prepared to send in both official languages, and I will go back and I address MP Simard's concern. So the motion reads as follows in English: that given the PBO's statement in the Trans Mountain Pipeline System Report 2024, released on November 8, 2024, the committee expresses concern about the financial uncertainty regarding the government's ability to sell the Trans Mountain Pipeline system at a price that avoids a net loss to taxpayer and risk, and ask the chairman to report back to the House. So far, everything is as you had in your motion. This is the addition. And have the Government of Canada provide a response to this report pursuant to Standing Order 109 as soon as possible. Okay? Now, with this amendment, and again, the whole purpose of what we are trying to do is trying to find that agreement so we can give you the platform to be able to have that conversation in the House of Commons. And as I committed to you, I'll be, and I'm sure all our colleagues would be there. So this is the genesis, and I hope we will have your support on that.
So we have an amendment on the floor. This is on the amendment, and I'm going to go to you, Monsieur Simard, next. But I would like to get Mr. Jawari, if you could be able to please provide a copy of that to the clerk, because he will have to get translations done. But Monsieur Simard, in the meantime, I'm going to hear what you got to say, because you might have a great suggestion like you normally do.
Si l'amendement
If the amendment, as I've understood it, says quite simply that the government provides a response as soon as possible, I would agree. And perhaps we could do that very quickly. I think that my Conservative colleagues would be in agreement with the motion if we only add that the government must provide a response as quickly as possible. At the end of the session, we should be able to finish this particular issue and move on to something else at the next meeting. I hope that would allow us to carry on with the work that remains for us to do.
And thank you, Mr. Simard. We have a point of order. Go ahead on a point of order, Mr. Dreeshen.
I'm interested if the clerk could tell us what SO 109 is. That was part of the discussion, so I think it would be important that everyone understand
Very good.
What the ramifications are of that.
So thank you, Mr. Dreeshen, on your point of order on SO 109. I'll get the clerk to get that in the meantime to get clarification on that. Mr. Jawari, in the interim, you had the floor. I want to make sure that you have sent your amendment over so all members of committee do have your amendment, and the clerk, most importantly, has your amendment so he can get it reviewed to make sure there's no irregularities and get it translated for colleagues. And
Mr.
so-
Chair, I believe that the amendment in both official languages being sent to the clerk
Okay.
imminently, and given that,
So,
sorry, I'll leave that to you.
okay, thank you. So I'm gonna get the clerk to respond to Mr. Dreeshen once he's able to.
Point
I got
of
a point of
order.
order from Mr. Angus.
Yeah, I mean, the last time we waited, everyone disappeared on us, and I think they were upstairs having a nice drink in the room while we all sat here waiting. So I say it's 6:30. I say we run out of time. We'll pick it up on Monday.
So what I will propose, sorry?
I just do want to take issue that there was actually nothing to show that anyone had left this room to have a drink. Like, I think
Okay,
that.
so colleagues, what I'm gonna propose here as, hold on. No, I'm gonna propose something, so I want everybody to listen clearly, just to make sure there's no miscommunication. The first hour, we do have a guest coming. We'll have the guest attend. Once the guest, we're done with, we will resume with this, but I would, we'll put it on the agenda that we will continue debate on this motion, but I would like to adjourn the meeting today so we can finish clean today, and we can start with this, with Mr. Juari having the floor next meeting, and everybody will have a copy of the translated version.
Legally do that if you adjourn, can you?
Well, he just moved an amendment, so.
Shouldn't you suspend though for that reason?
Yeah.
No,
You can certainly do that.
so we can do that the way I've proposed it, because so the Hansard can be done with this meeting and everything complete. So that's what I'll propose. Do we have, and we will have a schedule going out with what I've just said today, and we continue on in the second hour, or at 11:30ish, resuming conversation of this important motion and the amendment. Okay, colleagues, we will now adjourn. Thank you so much. Have a great the next few days of your week and weekend, and we'll see you Monday. We're adjourned.